My stepbrother murdered his mother, my stepmother, a couple years back on Mother's Day. And, he's, I don't like him, obviously. He's a
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Glam Reaper podcast. We are in season 5. I can't actually believe it. It's crazy. But today on my podcast, I have a very interesting guest. It might touch a few people, so we're just going to give you a sort of warning label, not a spoiler, but a warning label that we are talking about children and grief. And so I just want to put that out there that's what this episode is about. I would like to welcome Michaelene. Am I getting that name right?
You are. I'm Michaelene Dowers. I'm a licensed funeral director and embalmer in 9 states here in the US. I am a thanatologist, which means I have education in death studies and psychology. I'm working on my PhD, and I am the owner of Pollen Care. What Pollen is a curated grief resource program for families who have children who are going through grief, whether that be a loss that is a death or a non-death related loss, such as divorce, incarceration, things like that. What I do is I provide books for children who are grieving age 0 to 18 based on their very specific situation, whether it be a human loss, a pet loss. I address their disposition, their cultural requirements, whether it be Catholic, Buddhist, or even nationalities such as African American, Asian, Africans directly from Africa, and even different countries in Oceania. I have books for all sorts of loss as well as all sorts of kids.
Okay, wow. That is a lot. As you Americans would say, let's unpack that. Okay. So you're doing a lot of things. You're studying for your PhD. I mean, that's a full-time job in and of itself, studying for your PhD.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like to cram as much stuff as I can in my day, apparently.
Yeah. Okay, and I do think so. Okay, let's talk about the books. Now, are all the books written by you, or are they different authors?
Absolutely none are written by me. That is not my forte. I do a lot of academic writing for adults, for death care, but I do not do writing for children. So there are so many authors out there that do children's books, especially on grief and loss, that I've read through. Not all of them. I can't read through all of them, but most of them and the ones that I curate for children. That's how I'm able to make sure that the books that I curate for a child are appropriate to that specific child.
Okay, so effectively, Pollen is like a library for this specific. So you're a curator of books for this specific topic, specifically for children.
Yes, absolutely. My reason being is because if you think about being a parent and you suffer a loss yourself, say your mom passes away and you have a 7-year-old daughter who's going to miss grandma, are you in the right frame of mind to go find literature that's appropriate for your 7-year-old, or simply have that talk yourself? The answer is probably no, because you're also grieving. That's where I come into play. I do the work for you.
Yeah. It's a great resource. I'm just trying to think of even just a personal experience. My nephew, he lost his great grandmother. I mean, how blessed was he to have a great grandmother, but he lost his great grandmother, and he turned to my mom when she had him for the day and said, are you going to go anywhere though? And just checking in with, her. And just the way children deal with, and we all know this, children are not naive as we think they are. They're like sponges. They pick up on everything. They pick up on our emotions and stuff like that. And death is one of those things that I don't think is fully explained to them. And oftentimes then it happens before it's explained, should I say.
Yep. Absolutely. That's part of the problem, at least here in the US and most westernized nations. Families think either it's not going to happen to me or my child can't understand it. But research has shown that infants even understand at their own mental level grief and loss. So, for example, say a breastfeeding mother dies and her child is under the age of 1 year old still. that child is going to feel that grief and that disconnect. Obviously, you're not going to buy a book for the child, but there are resources out there that help facilitate at the beginning of the grief process so that as the child ages, they're not told euphemisms about mom dying. They're told mom died. This is what happened at something age appropriate for them.
Is there just obviously as much as it breaks my heart, we are in an era where, I mean, we're doing a podcast right now, but we are in an era where there is a little bit more audio and video, a little bit more. She's totally showing her age, but there's more audio and video than there was when I was a kid. I mean, a book absolutely makes sense. It's why I still love a physical book as much as I love my Kindle for travel purposes. But what about, like, do you curate resources from online communities and places, or how does that? Do you play to people's different, if I'm a parent and I don't want to buy a load of books, or my kid is just never going to pick up a book and I know that, is there resources? Is there a folder, an online folder you can provide?
Oh gosh. There are plenty of resources. There are so many. It's quite overwhelming, honestly, for a lot of parents to figure out what's suitable. But if your kid watches Bluey or Sesame Street, I can absolutely tell you Bluey addresses death. Sesame Street addresses death. There are places to find them online. I do have those specific episodes somewhere in my computer if anybody were to request them. I have sent out website options for families if they say, I can't really afford a curated kit at this time, but this is what happened. I'm clearly not going to leave them hanging. That's not in my realm of doing. So there are online resources. If a family asked me or requested me to, I would do a deep dive and find out their local resources, whether it be therapists, support group, anything like that. There are some public libraries out there in the US that have reached out to Pollen specifically to curate a kit for their library, their kids section. But even with that, they have to be really careful as to what is discussed with the current situation in America. Texas and Seattle, not the same, as we know. So the books that you would have in one location, you wouldn't necessarily have or could have in the other. Yeah. So a lot of locations want to, but have to be very cognizant on laws in their regions based on these things.
Laws and people in power. Like, for example, I had a recent, so I'm a celebrant and a memorial planner, right? And I was contacted by a family recently enough. It was actually a mother, right? And her daughter was a mother herself. And so the daughter had 2 kids. And the daughter's spouse had passed away pretty by his own hand and pretty violently. And the mother, his mother-in-law, I guess, but the mother of this daughter wanted to have a service. So was reaching out to me in terms of providing a service for him. But it was a tricky situation because they were estranged when he passed. There was a lot of anger and resentment and things. And it was a tricky situation. And I'm always very clear with Michael. I'm not a therapist. Yes, as part of my job, do I kind of mediate often between family members and stuff. But I'm not a therapist. But I do think providing a service, especially for the children, and hearing really good stories about their dad is important for them when they grow up. And so this mother really, she thought that, and she wanted to have a service, even though she knew it would be a tricky situation. But her daughter did not. Her daughter did not want to have a service and was sort of like, no. And so the mother reached out to me. We put together a quote unquote service of what it potentially could look like. And, the daughter decided ultimately that no, this was not happening. I'm not of the type where I'm going to convince somebody to have a service. Absolutely not. And it is a tricky situation. It's one of few situations in my 16 years where the service sort of hasn't gone ahead because of something like that. I've had 2 different services for people, where they can't agree, but this was the first time where it's never gone ahead. What would you have any advice in that situation, or for me to maybe give to the mother of the daughter that okay, we're not going to have a service, but here's something that maybe you can gift to your grandkids that might help open this up or have a conversation?
That is very tricky. I mean, first of all, she should have had a service. The mom should have had something, even if just something privately where they sit and they talk about dad. And even in that sitting and talking about dad, these kids, they came from somewhere. They're going to ask questions in the future. Whether they do it now or 5 years from now, they're going to say, what happened to my dad? Unfortunately, she's going to have to say, this is what he did. This was his actions. This was his frame of mind. And this is the path I took and why. As long as she can clearly explain those eventually, okay. Unfortunately, I personally feel like this could be damaging to the children. But if push comes to shove, the grandmother could provide resources from Pollen, or she can go find them herself and provide them to her daughter and say, when the time comes and when you feel it's right, here are some resources, here is contact information, here are some things you can use to help the kids. And then unfortunately, she would have to leave it at that because they're not her kids.
Well, and that's, yeah, like we provided a list of resources of people that they could talk to and seek therapy from and have one-on-ones or in a group scenario for the situation. That's sort of how we left it. And again, I would never force the agenda of me or anybody else onto a family, but it just did great art a little bit because exactly that we recommended having a really just small intimate. And I said, even the script we came up with, I was like, even if we deviate from that and, in the moment we sort of change it up, I said, that's fine. But yeah, I think everybody's different. Everybody grieves differently. I think as a parent, I am not a parent, so it's difficult for me to speak on that. But I do think as a parent, it's tough because you almost have to put your own feelings aside and decide what's right for the children. Like I might not be comfortable with talking about person X, but my children need to, for them to healthily grow. But yeah, it's a tough one. I don't ever like to put my opinions onto people in that way.
I think part of the problem is, and this is true to a lot of families out there, is they don't think it's important. Full disclosure, when my biological father, he didn't raise me, but when he died, my mom, I showed up at home one day. I was like 18 years old, and she goes, "Sit down. We need to talk." And me being me, I go, "Oh God, what did I do? What did I do? What am I in trouble for? What happened?" And she goes, "Your dad died," and I freaked out because it was I thought the man that raised me. And she goes, "No, no, 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 not him. He's fine. He's at work. Your biological dad." And I just said, "Oh, okay. What what do I do with this info?" And she was like, "I don't know. I just letting you know. Do you want to talk about it?" And I was like, "Not necessarily with you." At some point, you do talk about it. It does come out. But even if there was not that physical bond there, my mother didn't like the guy. Clearly, they hadn't been together since I was an infant. And she always talked poorly, very poorly about him throughout my life. But the opportunity was still there for me to ask the questions if necessary, if I felt necessary. But I do understand that there are so many parents out there that they don't see the value in this when they have been estranged from somebody for however long. Even if they're close to them, they, again, go back to the whole, my child doesn't understand or I'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
If they don't see the value in it, that's probably because they weren't raised to see the value in it.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And to all parents out there, it's you're constantly, I guess, or at least until they're of adult age, making decisions for your children. I mean, I know personally, I'm going to throw my mum under the bus for this one, but I don't mind. I'm always an open book on this podcast. When my uncle passed away, I was in the middle of my exams for college. And my mum chose not to tell me because she didn't want it to affect my studies. So she told me sort of after my exams were done. And I was so mad at her, because she took the choice away from me. She took the time. I may have gone to the funeral. Like she just, I know because I have a very open relationship with her and we talked about it afterwards. And I said, I understand you did this from a caring point of view, but I don't want you to make decisions for me like that anymore, because just give me the option. And I it's a tough one. It is a tough one. She would it have affected my studies? Probably. I mean, she probably isn't wrong, and so she had to make the decision in the moment. But I also was sort of like, okay, but hear me now. Let me make the choice. There might be another child out there who sort of says, you made the right call. I would have been a mess. That's fine. I trust you to make the call. It's not that I don't trust her, but I guess probably as well, I didn't know I was going to end up in this business, but I'm very attuned I always have been into going to a funeral and into sort of being in that moment. And, I missed, to be honest, the majority of um, my relatives' funerals just because of being traveling or not being told or being too young, things like that. So it's interesting looking back. It's a tough one. I don't envy the parents out there. It's a tough one. So.
No, me either. But one thing the parents have to realize is, again, putting those emotions aside. Yeah, she probably had really, really strong emotions about her partner, or your mom would have obviously wanted you to pass your classes and your tests and everything, because that is really the opening to the rest of your life. I have not a funny story, but back when I was in mortuary school, 12 years ago, 14 years ago, long time ago, I had a pet loss at home and it ruined the whole semester. I basically threw away 4 months worth of work. And I know some people are going to say it's silly because it's a pet, but I don't think so.
Those words are not allowed on this podcast. Anybody who knows me I even did my TEDx talk about this specific thing. Like, no, we had a loss last year, and it was, oh God, I'm probably still going to cry now. It was she died the day after my birthday, and I was going on a trip, on a holiday, my only holiday for the year that was pure vacation, nothing to do with work. I was going to zone out, have a
You're
nice.
crying the whole time.
Cried my eyes out the entire time. I was exhausted. And then even when I came off the trip, I had to go straight into work. And again, this is just part of adulting. I had to put on my big girl pants and just keep on going. And it's like, no. Anybody who says pet loss is that, I'm like, I won't even hear it, because I just firmly believe that, and scientifically it could even be proven to me. I just believe that grief is equivalent to the love you had for whatever it is that you're grieving, whether it's a divorce, whether it's the loss of a job. Your loss is your loss. Why are we judging them? Why are we putting them on a scale?
Exactly. Even non-living items. Like I have a stuffed animal that my husband got me from a carnival when we were dating. We've been together 12 years, I think. 10, 12, a long time. He exists. We're here. I took it on a trip with me. Actually, I took it to Baltimore for NFDA a couple years ago. And it's a goat. Goat just sits in my bag. That's it. And then I got home and I don't remember Goat coming home. He just stayed. Oh, it gets worse. I didn't know where Goat was for months. I contacted the hotel, the airline. Called the people who manufactured this darn thing. I called the county fair commission, say, I need a replacement goat. I cannot be without this goat. The fair felt so bad. They sent a stuffed bear the size of my couch. And I go, that's sweet, but I gave it to my daughter. That's not my goat. I think 4 months goes by and I hear my husband laughing his ass off in the bedroom. And he goes, you need to come in here. And I go, what? And I go in and he comes out from underneath the bed. We have a split king. It's a movable box. And I don't know, he was doing something with the electrical. And I go, what's up? And he goes, stay over there. And I stay at the foot of the bed and he pops up from the other side. Goat in the air. I started crying.
Oh my God.
It's so hard. And I go, what the hell? The goat had been stuck between the backs.
You had to know.
Down under. It doesn't make sense how he went straight down and under 2 layers and was under the mechanical device that raises and lowers the head and foot of the bed.
That's crazy.
And he was perfectly fine.
He was traumatized from the NFDA.
So what I did is I took an Apple AirTag, and he has a seam in the top of his head. I slit his seam open. I popped that in there, and then I sewed the seam back up. Every year, I pop it open, I change his head battery, and I sew it back up. And he doesn't leave my house. He stays He stays on my desk in our bedroom.
Oh my
That
God.
he's falling apart. He's gross. He gets cleaned. I send him off to a special restoration lady in Alabama who restores stuffed animals. I forget what she's called, but she's a stuffed animal clinic, I think.
Yeah.
And I send him off once a year. He gets a deep clean. Everything gets tightened up, and he comes back to me a month later,
I love him.
pristine.
I
He's
love him.
fallen apart. But the grief, the point is, like, this is an object that doesn't, it matters to nobody but me and my husband. This
No,
thing.
yeah, I get it.
I was devastated.
Yeah. And I just think look, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's one more thing for society to just be cognizant of, but like, I mean, my TEDx talk is 9 years old this year, at least I think it is anyway. And I just, like, the whole point of that talk was to let's just stop judging each other. Like, and it's sort of like, why are we judging each other based on the color of our skin, our identities, our gender, or what we're, like, what it's human nature to judge. I get it.
Right.
But it's just like, I don't understand this hierarchy of grief. I'm like,
Right.
who cares if my grief is scientifically harder than yours? It shouldn't matter. It should just be about accepting each other and just not judging each other. And I just think if we were a lot more kinder to each other, I just, like, I'm doing a celebrant training course at the moment where I'm training people, not I'm doing it, I'm teaching it. And like, one of the things I actually talk about is, taking that judgment out of the equation and just sort of being there for people, because that's really what it's all about, is just
Right.
being there for the family, um, and this idea, which it has become a huge trend now in our space, which I do love, like the life celebrations of life and stuff. Great.
Mhm.
I love it because, a bit like the death doula trend, it's bringing something that was already behind the shadows and in the dark into the light. And I love it for that reason. But what I don't love is that people are now throwing parties instead of funerals. And even though I'm an event planner, I am always crystal clear that, yes, we can do a celebration of life and we can have a party, but we also have to be cognizant of the loss that's there. If we have to have an entire service where it's just a party, we're not actually tapping into the grief. There's an empty chair, for God's sake, whether it's at the bar, in the boardroom, at the kitchen table, like wherever it is, somebody somewhere is missing. And even if, and I know this is an extreme, but even if, God forbid the deceased was like sort of a multiple serial killer or whatever, or, but going to the most extreme, they're still missed by somebody.
Somebody gave birth to that person. Somebody created that person. And I actually do have those kinds of connections. It's horrible, but bad people, they were still somebody's baby. They weren't bad when they were two. For example, and don't want to really unpack this, but my stepbrother murdered his mother, my stepmother, a couple years back on Mother's Day. And, I don't like him, obviously. He's a horrible person, but he has a dad. I know who his dad is, and I know where his dad lives, and he's grieving. His son's in prison for a very, very long time, and his ex-wife is dead because of what his son did. That whole part of my family is just a family unit that's destroyed.
Yeah.
And when he eventually dies, he's going to, obviously, I mean, I'm assuming in prison, but we'll see. His dad's going to grieve. Whether anybody else does or not is not the point. Somebody will.
Yeah. Yep.
And we need to be able to address that.
And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's these parties, or yeah, it's such a fascinating space, I think, to be in. And I become more fascinated every day with the different situations. And even talking to a funeral director a year ago, about, and even at the grief convention that was held in Dublin before Christmas, about how, especially with all these school shootings that are happening in the US, and a funeral home. And this is another thing, that like funeral homes aren't sort of trained up to deal with this. Like, if you have a school shooting in your local area, and suddenly your funeral home has to manage maybe up to 10 children's funerals. I mean, that is such a toll to take emotionally and physically.
Right.
on every member of the staff of that funeral home. But then, and I didn't even think of this until I had this initial conversation. I think it was about 2 years ago now, actually, where it's just so interesting how the human.
The firm that takes the shooter.
Exactly. Exactly.
The thing is somebody has to do something with the body, whether you like it, has to go somewhere. I don't. Why are you mad at me, the funeral director? Like, look, the family's going to contract with somebody by law. They got to do something.
Yeah. But it's even, and I had a conversation with somebody recently about this where we kind of delved into it even more. Sort of, what about as a hospital? You know, if you've brought in a victim and you've brought in the murderer and both of them have been shot, like, do you save one less? Do you try less? The doctors and nurses, I don't believe do. And it's a whole thing that I don't think we talk or think about too much. But anyway,
I have books for those exact situations, by the way.
amazing.
I have books on murder, incarceration, school shootings. I hate that I have to have these books.
That's amazing. Now, can I ask, how do people reach out to you? How do you get paid for this? Like, how does that? Listen, it's a question I've actually started asking a lot more people, because there's so many people in this space that don't get paid at all or well for their services. So,
well, I'd like to get paid more so I can only do this, but I do unfortunately have to have a day job usually. But in building Pollen right now, I'm just trying to recoup money that I've already spent. So I buy in bulk a lot of the times. My common books are in bulk. People come to me. I don't mark them up because I do buy them in bulk wholesale, so I get a bit of a discount. They are sold MSRP, and then I do a flat rate shipping of $20 per pack. That covers tax and shipping. So I'm usually breaking even at best. And honestly, I am the type of person that if I give somebody a quote of, let's say, $100, and they pay me $100, and then something comes up and I'm like, ooh, this other item would be really good for them, and I think this is going to heal their kid, it's going in there. You know it is.
yeah.
So I'm not going to hold back. So yeah, the best way to find me is at my website or on Instagram.
Great. Well, this has been an eye-opening conversation. I think most people will agree. I think the service is incredible. I think it can only grow, honestly. And I really hope that people seek you out. And I really hope that people check out your website and all the
Thank
good
you.
work you're doing. So yeah.
I work with the general public as well as funeral homes, hospice facilities. Anybody interested can reach out.
Well, we have a bit of both that listen to the Glam Reaper. So whether you're a funeral home or a hospice or anybody like that, or even a librarian, as you were saying, that wants to build a certain category, definitely reach out and you'll get them sorted. Love that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us. And maybe we'll have you back again next season and see how it's going.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.